Welcome. I'm going to give you a way to approach writing non-fiction for GCSE. This method is especially useful when answering question 5 on paper 2 of the AQA English Language GCSE, which asks you to write to argue, persuade, or express a view. But what I'm saying should apply to any situation where you have to write something non-fiction with a single viewpoint. I'm going to whiz through the basic structure to give you the overview, then I'm going to go back through each stage, giving you a bit more detail. I've got an example paragraph for each one, so I'll show you how it works and what it looks like, as well as what you can do to extend it even further. If you want to know where this comes from, the structure is adapted from Monroe's motivated sequence. Monroe was a psychologist and professor in the 1930s, and he studied the techniques of influential speakers and found common patterns in the structure of their speeches and texts that allowed them to present arguments in a compelling way. I've been teaching this structure for a while, and over time I've changed a couple of the titles for simplicity. So the overall structure of your piece of writing has 5 sections. If I were in an exam, I'd write these as single words on the exam paper with a few lines in between to add ideas and then build a brief plan around that. The sections are the grab, where you grab the attention of the reader or the audience. The problem, where you explain the problem clearly. The solution, where you offer a clear sequence of how to solve the problem. The benefits, where you show what the benefits look like. And the call to action, where you get the reader or audience to take the first step to implementing the solution. Let's spend a moment or two on each section, and we'll start with the grab. This is all about attention grabbing. You want to capture the audience's focus and make them emotionally invested in it. I'm going to imagine that I've been asked to write a text for a speech explaining to students the benefits of revision to illustrate this process, but the topic doesn't really matter. It's the structure I'm interested in. Imagine this. It's the night before your first GCSE exam. You're staring at a pile of notes, feeling overwhelmed and unprepared. The anxiety is unbearable, and you wish it started sooner. Now, picture a different scenario. Walking into the exam room with confidence, knowing you've done everything possible to succeed. This difference boils down to one thing: effective revision. I started here with an imperative and a colon. I have already used the language device and more adventurous punctuation, and I'm 2 words in. I'm also trying to make it personal. My tricolon adds extra detail, amplifying the effects on the individual. Now, I'm not going to narrate the individual techniques I've used, but I will put the speech in the description, and you can analyse how the language works if you like. But the overall impact comes from 2 things. Firstly, imagery and contrast. The speech starts with a vivid scenario of 2 contrasting situations, being unprepared and feeling confident. This grabs the attention and makes the audience imagine themselves in these scenarios. The second bit is the relatability. Many students can connect with the anxiety of exams, making the introduction immediately relevant to them. Now, I often teach students to start with those 2 words, imagine this. It's a great opener and gets you going, which a lot of people struggle with. But I could easily have started with a statistic that makes you think. For instance, of the 930,000 students sitting English Language GCSE this year, 326,000 of them will not pass. We need to make sure you are in the larger group, the 606,000 who will pass and therefore go on to sixth form with the freedom to study what they want, following their interests and dreams. So, how will you make that happen? Those figures are accurate, by the way. I got them from a government website. Don't be too alarmed, though. They include everyone who sat the exams, not just year 11. And all I've really done is work out the implications from having a pass rate of about 65%. And that's not expected to shift much in either direction. So, where are we? We've got a strong interest, we've hooked the examiner, and we're going to end up in that good group, the group that passes. The next step is to establish a problem or need. You need to establish why this is a genuine issue and why the audience or reader should care. Let's return to my example and show you what it looks like. GCSEs are one of the most important milestones of your education. They open doors to further study, jobs and opportunities that shape your future. But here's the problem. Without proper revision, your knowledge remains scattered and unreliable. Stress skyrockets, performance dips, and your true potential remains untapped. Many students underestimate how much consistent preparation can impact their results, and that mistake can cost them dearly. So how does this work? I've established the importance of the problem. GCSEs are framed as critical to future opportunities like further education and careers. I've put in an emotive appeal. The speech emphasises feelings of stress, regret, and wasted potential if revision isn't taken seriously. I've extended the problem to one the entire audience faces, making it hard to dismiss. This stage of the speech helps to ground your argument in evidence, making it relevant and urgent. For question 5, this shows the examiner your ability to build a logical foundation for your viewpoints. You could take it further, though, and you could use some of these techniques. You could borrow authority. You can quote a made-up professor, put their ideas into the topic, but make it believable. This works well in articles in particular because articles will always use sound bites and quotations. You can have a blend of facts and emotions to cover all the bases, and that works well in this section. So if you don't start with statistics, use some here. Make them up, but make them realistic. If you start with facts and figures, an anecdote could work well in this section, making the facts seem more human. Now, you've established the problem, you need to propose a solution. What can be done to address the issue? You want the reader or audience to see a clear path forward and to understand the action they can take to solve the problem. Back to my example speech. The solution is simple. Firstly, start revising early and effectively. Secondly, focusing on techniques that will make a genuine improvement in your knowledge, like using flashcards to learn quotations and keywords, making mind maps, and using Cornell notes. These things will ensure your brain absorbs the content and retains the information. Finally, practicing past papers, perhaps for specific questions at first, and working out your strengths and weaknesses will mean that you're not just studying hard, you're studying smart. What am I doing with this? I'm trying to be really clear and make things achievable, as well as being specific about the effective techniques that are practical and useful. I've used a sequence of ideas. There's a clear 3-step plan, and this helps to organise them for the reader or the audience, and it's clearly signposted for them, which the examiner will reward me for. But I could still do better. I could make it even stronger by mentioning that the methods I'm proposing have been researched and endorsed by professionals, in this case in the education sector. An anecdote acting as a success story would work well here, particularly if you haven't used one already, and you can even put an alternative viewpoint here. But if you do, be careful to say why it's wrong. You can say things like, some people will tell you that you need to do X, however, we actually need to do Y because, and then give a reason, and by doing that you're overcoming objections, and that will strengthen your argument. The 4th section is about the benefits. You want the audience to imagine the positive outcomes of taking action and possibly the negative ones of not acting. What you're really doing is painting a picture of what the future could be. Here's my example. Imagine the feeling of calm as you sit down in your exam, ready to tackle every question with precision, knowing that you are well prepared and know what to expect. Let's jump further into the future and think about the joy of seeing your results, knowing you've earned grades that reflect your abilities. You're proud, not just of the achievement, but the way you went about it, and others are proud of you too. Now, look even further into the future. Those grades helping you secure a place at your dream college, an apprenticeship, or even your ideal career. All of this is possible because you invested time and effort into revising now. So what am I doing here? I'm trying to frame this positively. The calmness at the beginning shows something to aspire to, and then I link it to the long-term goals. The idea of pride becomes a recurring idea, emphasised by the repetition. But you can do other things in this section though. If you started with an imaginary student, you can bring them back and describe them as successful. This will bring a cyclical structure to your writing. The next section is really short, and you can even swap bits around if you want to make it entirely cyclical. You can be more technical and talk about the mechanisms and metrics for success. You can say things like, "We will know we're doing it right when we can see." I've stayed positive, but you can equally show the negative side. What will happen if your solution is ignored? This section is clearly an emotive one, so use emotive language and appeal to emotions by making the consequences vivid and well described. The final section is the call to action. This is a short section and needs to be an achievable first step for your readers. Let's go back to my example. Don't wait until it's too late. Start small. Set aside 20 minutes today to go through some key words for your next science exam. Write them on flashcards and write the definitions on the other side. Check what you know and what you don't know. And that's it. Step 1 of the journey will be taken. Remember, your GCSEs are a stepping stone to your dreams. By revising effectively, you're not just preparing for exams, you're preparing for success. So take that first step today. Your future is worth it. This section will always feature a direct address because you want somebody to do something. And it's not a bad idea to repeat some of the benefits from earlier for emphasis. Different text types could also be acknowledged in this section. If it's an article, you can say, "When you put this paper down, the first thing I want you to do is something." If it's a letter, you can say, "I know you're a busy person, but when you finish reading this letter, I want one thing to go to the top of your to-do list, and that is something." If it's a speech, you can say, "When you leave this hall, I want you to commit to doing just one thing, and that is..." The purpose of this was to give you a clear way of writing something compelling and engaging, which is exactly what your examiner will be looking for and rewarding with high marks. I'm going to finish with my own call to action. Do something small, do something achievable. Grab your pen, write down these headings on a piece of paper, and write down the kinds of things that go in each section. When you've done that, well done. You've revised an aspect of GCSE English language. I've got more videos coming, so please do subscribe. In the meantime, check out one of these videos from the playlist. I look forward to seeing you again soon.